Hello, chess fans. Welcome to another edition of Chess Chat, a program brought to you live from the Workers' Credit Union studios at Fitchburg Access Television. I am George Merijanian, Program Director of the Wachusett Chess Club at Fitchburg State University. This club has been in suspension since mid-March 2020 because of the COVID-19 pandemic. We are hopeful that we will be able to return before long to over-the-board play at the university. But with me today for this edition of Chess Chat, we have our award-winning director, Darren Dame of Fitchburg, the recipient of the prestigious FATV Boulder Award in 2009. He's assisted in the control room and also outside the control room by fellow resident and longtime Wachusett Chess Club member Brian Bigelow. And sitting across from me is my longtime associate, trusty co-host, fellow chess player, chess author, and chess photographer, and an all-around good guy, Dave Kuchar of Westminster. Hello, Dave.
Hi, George.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Dave. Well, Dave, we had a major international event that was concluded about a week and a half ago in Sochi, Russia. Now, Sochi, Russia is the largest resort city in Russia. It's actually along the Black Sea in southern Russia. But they held a major international tournament there. What was this event that they held in Sochi, Russia?
So they call it the FIDE World Cup.
Okay, FIDE World. Now, what is this FIDE?
Oh, sorry, yeah.
We use the word FIDE a lot. Actually, we use it on the show all the time.
Right, so it's the World Chess Federation.
Right. Now, FIDE actually is an acronym. It's a French acronym. It stands for Fédération Internationale des Échecs.
Yep.
We always refer to it as FIDE, which is the World Chess Federation.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. So they held this World Cup, but they actually held two World Cups.
Right,
yeah.
So they held the Open.
Yes, anybody could play.
Anybody could.
If they were strong enough, right?
Right, if they're strong enough, and they had a separate women's event.
Okay.
And both were knockout events.
Oh, these were elimination, single
elimination. So every pair of players plays 2 games.
Right.
And whoever wins goes on to the next round.
But what if it's drawn?
If it's a tie, if it's 1-1 after the 2 days, and they have a third day of playoffs where they play ever faster time control, so
what they call a rapid game.
and then blitz and Armageddon if it's still tied. So until there's a single winner who advances.
Okay. Now I believe they with the regular World Cup, I think they had was it 206 men that played.
I think so, right.
And then the Women's Cup, they had 103.
Right.
Okay.
So in the first round, it's not everybody plays. It's a bunch of players get by. So after one round, there's 128.
Right. That's where they want to start. Yes.
Right. And then the women's, it was 64. After the first round.
Now our director Darren Dame has a number of photos from that event, and we actually had a couple of players from Massachusetts. Right. Some of our top players from Massachusetts.
Very local.
Local. Actually, they have local connections. Yep. Let's see. Darren's going to show a photo. Okay, that's a game, but okay. Now, what do we have here? This is a photo of, on the left, Sam Sevian, Grandmaster Sam Sevian, who's 20 years old. He lives in Holden. He is the top-rated Grandmaster in Massachusetts. Yeah, and he was there playing in the Cup. Okay, now standing next to him with the mask on is someone that you and I know very well. Right. Because she won the 2014 Wachusett Chess Club Championship with a perfect score, by the way. And that is actually Carissa Yip. Carissa Yip, who's a woman grandmaster, also an international master. She earned that title the same year, 2019. So they both competed in this year's World Cup in Sochi, Russia. Okay, let's see some other photos. Now there we have a photo of Carissa Yip standing on the left. And who is that person? Is with the mask on in the middle?
Yeah.
Do we know who this is?
That's the world champion, Magnus
That is
Carlson.
World champion Magnus Carlson of Norway. He's 31 years old. He's going to turn 32 in November, by the way. And he he's the top-rated player in the world.
Top-rated player in the world. I think Carissa posted that on Twitter and said thrill of her life.
That was a thrill, having standing next to
the world champion.
Now I don't know who actually the player is.
I think it's Jason Tang.
Jason Tang,
I think he's a grandmaster
from the United States.
From the United States, yeah.
Okay. So, but that was a thrill for Carissa to have a photo taken with the world champion. Now, Magnus actually has been world champion since 2013. So he's been champion for 8 years. Okay, let's go to the next photo. Oh, here's another nice photo of Carissa at the board at the cup, the Women's World Cup. Okay, a nice photo of Carissa. Again, she's going to turn, I believe, 18 in September. Yes, right. Because right. And she started. You know when she started learning chess? At the age of 6. That's what her father Percy. We've had them on the show. Right. We've had them on maybe a half a dozen times on Chess Chat. Okay, let's go to another. There's another photo of Carissa. Now here is world champion Magnus Carlson, who, by the way, is going to have to defend his title in November. There's a world championship match. He's going to play the Russian Grandmaster Jan Nepomniachtchi. Right. Where's that match being played? Is it Dubai?
Dubai.
Dubai.
In November.
And we'll have a program about that. You will have a program about that world championship match on Chess Chat. Okay, let's go to another photo. Now here is a photo of the player on the left with the beard. Is a player who has a Massachusetts connection because he graduated from Brandeis University in Waltham, I think it's Brandeis. That's Sam Shanklin, Grandmaster Sam Shanklin, who won the U.S. Championship in 2018.
That's right.
Yeah, and he astoundingly did very well. Did he make it to the quarterfinals?
The quarterfinals and lost against the player on the right.
Yeah, the player on the right is Russian Grandmaster Sergei Karyakin, who, by the way, played Magnus Carlson in a World Championship match in 2016 and lost. But again, he's one of the top players of the world. By the way, his ranking in the world right now, Karyakin on the right, he's ranked rating-wise 6th in the world. Okay. Yeah. So there are other players even higher rated than Karyakin, but he's one of the top players in the world. Now here we have a photo of, this is actually on the left, this is the Polish Grandmaster Jan Krzysztof Duda. He's I think 23 years old. You told me he's 23 years old, from Poland, and they must be celebrating in Poland.
I'm sure,
because he won this year's World Cup. Big surprise.
Right.
Big surprise. Because now and the player on the rest was Karyakin. That was and he defeated Sergei Karyakin in the finals. Right. Okay. Now what happened to Magnus Carlson? Wasn't Magnus Carlson expected to win this?
Sure, he's always expected to be the winner, but he lost.
Now who eliminated Magnus Carlson from the World
Cup?
Duda did it.
In the previous round, the semifinals.
Right, exactly. Right, he beat him. And which set up the final between Duda and Karyakin. Right, exactly. Right. So this was a very exciting World Cup. And again, it's going to get a lot of coverage, and certainly in Chess Life magazine, the U.S. Chess Federation will certainly cover it. Right. Because we had actually American players compete in it. So I expect a very good coverage in an upcoming issue of Chess Life. Now we're going to have a treat for our Chess Chat viewers, because we're going to present the decisive game, the game that actually clinched the World Cup win for Jan Krzysztof Duda. Right. This I think was played on August. Yeah, it was a little more than a week ago. Yeah,
just over a week. Yeah.
And in this game, Duda had white, Karyakin black. So how did the Duda?
So we should probably just quickly mention. So they had already played one game.
Yes. Explain to our viewers.
So all I know about that is it was a quick game that Karyakin supposedly screwed up his opening.
He had white.
He had white, and something went wrong, and he had to force a repetition of moves just to get a draw. Okay. So the first one was a draw. So this one, if Duda wins, he wins the World Cup. All right. So which he did.
And he did that.
He did. So
he clinched it with.
He clinched it with this game
by beating Karyakin in the game 2. Okay. All right. So let's present this game by playing Duda's first move.
D4.
D4. Okay. We've played that scores of times on Chess Chat before. Now, in response to that, Karyakin played knight f6, which of course is a good opening move. Develops the knight, stops white from playing the pawn to e4, which white would love to do that if given the chance. But of course, that didn't happen. Okay, so what did Duda do now?
He plays c4.
Okay, so that's a logical continuation.
Logical move, so then the knight can come out behind it and not block it.
Right, exactly. So it's actually a fight over the, it's going to be a fight over the control of the center.
Control of the center, right.
Okay, so Karyakin, second move, he plays the pawn on e7 to e6. That's his move. It opens up now this diagonal for the dark squared bishop. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Duda has choices here.
Lots of choices.
Okay.
Right.
What are some choices for?
So the biggest ones, I guess, this was probably the most common, is knight to c3.
Yes, which could prepare e4. If you play knight c3, there is the threat of continuing at e4. Okay. And but what did he actually end up playing?
He actually plays knight to f3.
Right. Exactly.
Not quite as common.
All right. All right. So in this position, black. Karyakin. Now he could have actually come out with the bishop before check.
Yeah.
There is a defense called the Bogo Indian defense, named after a Russian-born German player by the name of Yefim Bogolyubov, and that's why it's called the Bogo Indian defense. But instead, he played d5. He just plays the pawn up to d5. Okay. And by the way, we have transposed, with these three moves. We actually can now attach an opening name to this at this point. What is this called?
So this would be the Queen's Gambit.
Ooh.
Queen's Gambit declined, I guess.
Queen's Gambit, yeah, right. It's declined right now.
Right.
But wait a minute, is this wasn't there a movie called The Queen's Gambit?
Yep, sure.
What, on Netflix?
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
I think so, yep.
Was that popular? Was that a popular?
Extremely popular,
I guess that became a popular film.
Yeah.
Okay. So in response to d5, it's Duda's move. What does he do?
Develops his other knight to c3.
Okay. A good developing move. That's the important thing in the opening, getting those pieces out and developing those pieces okay, as fast as possible. Now, in response to this, now black, in this position, there's a number of things that black can play here. Black actually can play the bishop to e7 to prepare the castle. That's a good move. Could also play c6, reinforcing the pawn on d5. Okay. And also, actually, those are the three main. I don't know whether you can play knight bd7. Is that possible too?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Even developing it here, that's good. See, the problem here for black is this hemmed-in
bishop is shut in,
light square bishop here. But he decides, in response, to play c5.
Yep.
Okay, that's interesting. That's probably not as popular as the other moves I showed, like bishop e7.
Right.
I say, what did Duda do now?
Plays c takes d5.
Okay. So we have an exchange here. Now, of course, Karyakin is black, can recapture that pawn on d5 with the knight.
With the knight.
But he chooses not to recapture with the knight. Instead, he recaptures actually with the... he takes the c pawn and captures the pawn on d4. That's what he does.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's rather interesting. So now the pawn is attacking the knight on c3. So how did Duda respond to that?
So queen takes d4.
Okay. All right. And now, Karyakin now captures the pawn on d5 with the e pawn.
With the pawn.
He takes with the pawn, which happens to open up now the diagonal. He's actually solved his bishop problem. But he actually has inflicted upon himself there's a liability or a what has been created now by this recapture with the e pawn taking the d pawn? What does black now have?
So it's called an isolated queen pawn because it's got no support on the other files.
Now, is it good or bad to have an isolated pawn?
It's got benefits and it's got disadvantages.
As a rule, I would say, well, I don't know, maybe you agree or disagree. I would try to avoid inflicting upon oneself an isolated pawn. But there are some variations where players are willing to take on an isolated pawn if there's compensation in some sort. So what did Duda do now?
So bishop to g5. So he's attacking the defender of the pawn.
Right, because it's defended twice with the knight and queen, but he'd like to eliminate this defender and win and maybe
win the pawn.
Win the pawn on d5. So on bishop g5, well, Karyakin said, wait a minute, I've got to protect that knight with the bishop. If I play the bishop here...
And break the pin.
Break the pin. Right, exactly. It's a logical continuation. The most sensible continuation is bishop e7. Okay, Duda's move. What does he do?
e3 opens the diagonal up for the bishop.
Right, opens up the diagonal for the bishop. Now black says, well, okay, I'm going to castle into safety.
Right.
Hopefully into safety.
Right.
So black, Karyakin castles on his 8th move. Okay, it's Duda's move. What does he do?
He does something else slightly unusual. Bishop to e2 is most common, preparing to castle, but he plays rook to d1.
Yeah.
Adding another attacker to the pawn on d5.
So it's attacked 3 times.
3 times.
Knight, rook, queen, right.
It's only defended twice. Right.
Okay, so what is Karyakin going to do after rook d1 here? Well, Karyakin says, now he could have actually brought the bishop to e6.
Sure, yep.
That defends the pawn again.
That's possible.
But he decided, no, I'm going to gain time and bring the knight to c6 and attack the queen.
Right.
Forcing that queen to move.
Right.
All right, the question is, where is that queen going now on its 10th move?
Queen to a4.
Okay, right. Okay. And I think you told me, that this position has appeared before. Has this position been appeared before?
Yeah, I think it was like 10 years ago, a game with Giri.
Anish Giri.
Yeah.
It was a grandma. Actually,
so
this is nothing new. This is
right.
We're not in new territory. I mean, Duda and Karyakin.
But almost. I mean, I think it's only occurred once.
We're getting there, but again, this position has appeared, like 10 years, as you say, about 10 years ago.
Yep.
So after Queen A4, well, now Karyakin said, I'm going to protect that pawn again on D5 by playing Bishop E6.
Right.
So he develops another piece, uses it as a defender on the pawn on D5. Okay. So what is Duda going to do now?
Duda plays Bishop to B5.
What's the threat?
So he's threatening to take the knight. After recapturing, he wins the pawn.
Wins a pawn. So he's threatening to win a pawn.
Threatening to win a pawn.
Okay. So how does black respond to the threat of white threatening to win a pawn here with the bishop taking on C6? Well, what he does here is he plays the queen to B6, does he not?
Yep.
That's what he does.
Yep.
He plays here. So he has another piece
defending the knight.
Defending here. He has now the pawn and the queen defending the knight on C6. All right.
Yep.
Duda's move. What does he do?
Bishop takes knight. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, wrong one.
Oh.
Bishop takes knight on F6.
Oh, he takes this.
Right,
okay.
right.
So he takes the knight on F6.
Yes.
Bishop takes F6. And to which Karyakin responds with bishop takes F6. And that's his answer. And that was move 12 for black. Duda's move. What is he going to do?
So now he takes the pawn on D5.
Right.
So he's temporarily winning it.
He is actually temporarily ahead by one pawn.
By a pawn, yep.
However, after he takes knight takes D5, and also attacks the queen, by the way.
Yeah.
Karyakin says, I got to get rid of that knight.
Yep.
So bishop takes the knight on D5 is his move. I should actually be following what's on the board here. So to which Duda plays what?
Rook takes D5.
He had no other move. Right.
Yep.
Rook takes D5. Let me see it. Is there? Yeah, I see it. Rook takes D5. And that was on move 14. Now, remember, Duda went a pawn ahead by taking the pawn on D5.
Right.
But Karyakin knew that by doing that, he's able to get the pawn back by taking the pawn on B2 with the bishop.
Yep.
Bishop takes B2 is what he does. And now, materially, it's even.
It's even, yeah.
They have the same number of pawns. However, white has a pawn majority on the king's side, 4 versus 3, and black has the majority on the queen side, 2 versus the 1.
Right.
But materially, it's even. Positionally, that's another thing.
Yep.
Right, okay. So it's now white's move. It's Duda's move. What does he do?
And it makes a very interesting move. So castling would be certainly reasonable. It's probably what I would do. Probably.
Yes. I think most, in fact,
99% of players would
yes,
do.
I think the majority of players that we know would play with castle. Now this.
He plays king to e2.
This is an astounding move. Now he must have figured out. Wait a minute. With the queen still on the. Usually you don't do this.
Right.
You don't usually, forego castling and play a move like that, where there could be danger here.
Right. So if the queens stay on the board, that's dangerous. If you can get rid of the queens, it could be an advantage to have the king in the center for the end game.
Yeah. So I'm sure the commentators at the World Cup, and they had commentators doing it. They must have really were thrilled.
Yeah, I meant to go back and see what they said, and I forgot.
Okay. Yeah. Well, again, when you go back, I'm sure you're going to find some very interesting comments by the GM commentators about this move.
I bet they were surprised.
Okay. Now, Karyakin says, you know what? That probably surprised Karyakin.
Okay, we're getting the signal to speed up a little more.
Okay, fine.
Yep.
Okay, so the bishop on b2, he retreats it. He brings it back to f6. He said, wait a minute, I don't want to be there. I don't want to be out in no man's land here. So he brings it back. So what does Duda do play now?
Rook on h to d1.
Okay.
Doubling the rooks on the open file.
And this is always good. Would you say it's good advice to tell players,
sure,
if you're given a chance to double rooks on an open file, do it.
Right.
It's powerful to
yep,
double rooks.
Yep.
You either double them on the file or even doubling rooks on a rank.
On a rank, right.
A very good strategy if you can do it. And that's what Duda did. Now we have a problem. Well, again, this is still defended, but there's a threat of actually taking here and isolating this pawn.
Right.
Yeah. So the Karyakin realized, I don't want an isolated c pawn
right,
with any capture here.
Yep.
So he brings this rook on a8 to c8. So if there's any capture, he can actually take back with the rook instead of with the pawn and,
right,
and maintain his connected pawns here.
Yep.
Okay, it's Duda's move. What does he do?
Plays bishop to c4. So it's
yeah,
indirectly aiming at that f7 pawn.
Right, because this is a vulnerable square.
He's
spot
planning
here
to pile up on that.
If he can pile up on that f7 square.
Yep.
Okay, so this is what the Karyakin did. He played the queen to b4.
Yep.
Offering. He said, "Wait a minute, I like to exchange queens." It looks like he's offering the queen
right,
exchange. Yeah.
But we realize he can't exchange right now because the knight takes back.
Well, let's show that actually.
Yeah. So if we do that,
let's show it on camera. If the knight would take here,
right,
but this would win for black because black now is attacking the rook on d5 as well as attacking the bishop on c4.
Right.
He can't save it.
He can't save it.
He's going to lose a piece.
So he can't trade queens yet.
So white cannot afford to take queens. So he just retreats it to b3. Queen b3.
Yeah.
So at this point, Karyakin says, wait a minute, I'm going to, look, I offered the queen, exchange of queens, you declined it, you retreated, I'm going to take that queen once and for all.
Like I said, I think it's a little surprising because the king's in the center, you would think he'd want to keep the queens on the board.
It was best for him to retreat, either maybe bring the queen, bring even here, even though the rook could come down and attack it, it could still move.
Yeah.
It's a big surprise that he would actually offer the exchange of queens and make it. So he did that. Queen takes b3 is what Karyakin did on move 18, and of course the next move,
bishop takes b3.
He takes back with the bishop right now with the pawn. Now there is a threat. What is white's threat here? It's black's move, but white has a threat. What is it?
Just to bring this rook down to the 7th, and that's,
look at this. It adds more pressure here, although it's adequately defended with the king and the rook.
Right.
But this is the big threat.
Right.
Attacking this undefended pawn on b7.
Right.
So, okay, we'll put the rook back.
Yep.
So, Karyakin sees that.
Yep.
He says, wait a minute, I'm not allowing any rook down to d7. He plays the rook on c6, back to b8.
Right, which
it's
is
retreating.
It's not something he'd
yeah.
prefer to do.
No, but he wants to stop the
right,
rook from occupying the 7th rank on the square d7. Okay. So what do we have here? It's white's 4th move coming up. What does Duda decide to do?
So now that his pieces are in retreat over on the queen side, he starts an attack.
Oh wow!
On the king side.
Right, and I can see a threat of advancing the pawn to g5 and attack the bishop.
Right. Okay.
So Karyakin says, I don't want this to happen.
Right.
I don't want you to start advancing this pawn to g5. So he plays h6. But I think you pointed out to me that the Karyakin should have actually in this position played this pawn to g6 so he could hide, bring the bishop back here.
The bishop covers the dark squares, the pawn covers the light squares.
Yeah, so but he said he played h6.
Right.
That was his 20th move. So how does Duda continue? His 21st move.
So he continues his attack with h4.
Yeah, because the pawn is protected by the knight.
Yep.
And he is now threatening to advance the pawn to g5.
Yep, exactly.
So in response to that, now Karyakin says, I'm going to outplay the move. Probably I should have played the previous move.
Right.
He plays g6 now.
Yep.
All right, so he plays g6. It's Duda's move. What does Duda do?
Continues the attack with g5.
Attacks there.
It's defended 3 different ways.
Right, exactly. So what the Karyakin responds, he takes on move 22, H takes the pawn on G5. H takes G5 is
Right.
what he plays, and what does Duda do? What does Duda do?
He plays H takes G5. Knight takes G5 actually might have been a little bit better.
Yeah, okay.
Adding
Because it puts
another
adds another piece on the pressure
attacking,
on the pawn on F7. Yeah, but he decides he's going to take with the pawn.
Yep.
That was the 23rd move. All right, so the bishop has to move.
Yep.
And he could have gone down here. Possible. No, that's a little dangerous. He could be attacked. He decides he's going to come here. He wants to add more protection on this square here.
Keep that protected.
Yeah,
Yep.
keep this square protected on. So he plays bishop e7. So how does Duda continue?
Plays rook e5. So now he's attacking the bishop.
Wow, attacks the bishop.
And now this bishop can directly, is pinning this pawn.
Wow. All right, so in response to that, Karyakin plays the knight on b8 to c6, which protects the bishop, but also attacks the rook.
Attacks the rook, right.
So knight c6 on move 24 is what Karyakin played. Now what does Duda do?
And now Karyakin probably missed this move. This is a pretty clever move, rook to d7. So he's basically saying, go ahead.
Yeah, because he would he not gain would he gain two minor pieces out of this, or he's going to gain? He's going to get compensation.
He could have just taken the rook.
That's right. He could have done that. Right. That's true. But he chose not to do that. After rook, I lost my place. He played knight c6.
Yeah.
He overlooked this rook d7. So this bishop now he doesn't want to lose this. So he comes back bishop d8. That's what he played on the move 25. Okay. Let's move it along and see what Duda did now.
So rook to b5.
Oh, now we definitely have a threat here.
Right.
We've got a double attack on this pawn, threatening to win this pawn right here on b7. So after rook b5, well, now here's a case where the knight over here goes to a5, protects the pawn on b7, at the same time attacks the bishop on b3. Okay, so what does Duda do now?
And now it's been pointed out that he could have simply just taken the bishop.
Yep.
And after getting taken back, he takes the knight, so he gets two pieces.
Two minor pieces for the rook. Yeah. And it actually continues and actually has a threat on this pawn on
that pawn
on e7. Right.
But one thing that was pointed out is that both players are probably exhausted at this point. They've been playing pretty much every day for a month. So he plays bishop to d5. It's not quite as good, but it's still going to win.
Now we have an attack here.
Right.
Okay. All right. So he in response, we have Karyakin playing rook c7. He wants to actually, again, he's now threatening he wants to exchange. And still, okay, so what does Duda do now?
So again, this is a nice shot.
Karyakin overlooked this because first of all, he cannot take this bishop with the rook because the rook would capture the bishop with check.
With check.
Yeah, right.
And then this knight would fall. Yep.
Right. So this would be a mistake. So after this, he has to move the king.
Yep.
He has to move the king up to g7, which he did. Yep. Okay. And now what?
So rook takes c7.
Rook takes c7. Of course, he only has one move.
Yep.
Bishop takes c7 is what he did on the 29th move. Now it's Duda's move. What does he do?
His final move, bishop to d5.
Okay. And now
so he's attacking. He's attacking this pawn twice.
He's attacking it twice. But of course, it's defended by the knight.
Yep.
The bishop is protecting the knight. But you know what Karyakin did here?
He resigned.
He resigned. Now, he's what? He's 1 point, Duda's 1 point ahead?
1 pawn ahead.
1 point.
Yep.
Now, why did Karyakin resign? You and I know that but if we were in this position, we'd play on.
Sure.
Right. Now, but at that level, at that grandmaster level, where you have professional players, they know that this is actually a lost position.
Lost position.
Sorry. So, and again, Jan-Krzysztof Duda, winning this year's FIDE World Cup in Sochi, Russia. He is now qualified. Doesn't he qualify by winning the World Cup?
For the candidates tournament. And Karyakin does as well.
Yeah, the top two.
Top two players.
So I hope that our Chess Chat viewers enjoyed the game that you and I, Dave, presented. Again, exciting World Cup this year in Sochi, Russia. Yep. We'll see you next time on Chess Chat.